Welcome back, coaches. This is the Football Coaching Podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain, here with Joe Daniel, as always.
What's up, Coach?
It's another wonderful day. Spring ball is in the air. I am 85% recovered from letting some dude run a knife through my belly and cut out my appendix.
Yep.
Life is good.
Good stuff. Especially the knife through the appendix thing,
Well, here's what I just looked at is I got a second spring break. So I had spring break, 2 weeks at work, another spring break. But this one cost me, my time off and but I got to sit around the house and be in pain, so it was beautiful.
Yeah.
It's all we can ask for, right?
What more can you ask for? I do miss, we have one vacation scheduled, and of course I will probably, last year I only worked about a half day during it. We have one beach week that we do every year. Last year I only worked about a half day during it, but I think I worked the Saturday before, maybe the Sunday night after we got home. It is very hard to just be out for a week. But I do miss, one of the things that I miss about teaching is the breaks, because that doesn't happen in this line of work. It is hard enough just to take the weekend off. But to not have somebody say, hey, you're out this week. And I know you do other stuff when you're off, but it's at least a change of pace from the rest of the year.
I was going to say, with me, I have found that it's hard to get away from the football internet world because I love it. I legitimately love sitting here in front of my computer, making a playbook or answering a football question or watching film. I've been breaking down film all day, and not once have I been like, God, I dread this, right? No, it's still fun. I know you're in your 15th year or whatever of doing this. You've probably lost some of that fire, but I legitimately... my wife has to yell at me like, get off the computer. Come be dad, please, because you worked all day and then you worked all evening. Okay.
I enjoy it, but that's the thing is it's my business. And so if I'm doing that, I can compartmentalize it and say this is for Colonial Heights, and I can I had a conversation with Bill on Friday and kind of nailed down exactly what I want to do with our passing game, Bill Mountjoy, and got it. And I'm super excited about that and drawing it up and it's nothing like revolutionary, but just having it that idea. So I enjoy that. I've done a lot of the stuff that I might have done once upon a time and I don't need to do it again. That I enjoy doing, but there's definitely, I definitely enjoy certain things, but you know what, I'll say one thing, and I know you're the same way. I really enjoy learning new stuff, and you do run out of new stuff, whereas I'm at the the old guys used to say, if you go to a clinic and you learn one little nugget that you can use, it was worth it. And what I used to enjoy going to a clinic was I'd go to a 3-day glacier clinic and I would fill up an entire notebook because everything wasn't, and I might not use any of it. Right. I just, I'd sit in wing T guys and 3-4 guys and I didn't care who. And I wanted somebody that had something new to learn. O-line guys, and I loved all the detail, and I still do. I do enjoy that stuff, but I'm looking for the one little nugget, and that's it's harder to sit here and watch stuff, and so yeah, that is a little bit different.
Yeah, this is not the Joe Daniel retirement episode, by the way. So if y'all were wondering, it's not where this is headed.
No, this is not my retirement. I don't have a retirement coming anytime soon. Still at least 5 years out on that.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to our level up section since we're talking about all the learning of new things, and I'll let you kick it off tonight. I know that I have kind of taken the leads sometimes on those, but I want to hear what you're doing.
So this weekend we had one of our coaches from our staff last year got a new head coaching job and wanted to bring Coach Basquette in for speed training there. And so he's about an hour away from me. So I drove down Friday and Saturday to watch Dale and get a lot of film. got a lot of film. The second day we lost the audio, but we got a lot of film. We still got the film, so we can dub over or whatever. Um, One was just seeing Dale. The He's always trying something new, and that's what we're talking about. He's always testing something new, trying something new, tweaking something. Um, when he's teaching it, watching these kids over what was essentially less than 4 hours of gym time. And actually, the second day they couldn't get the gym, so they're outside on the field, which is not ideal for the install, but it works. Um, and just the transformation in this group of kids, about 30 kids, and seeing the transformation in them from the start to the end of day one, and how incredible that is, and then the end of day two, and knowing that, really one of the things to understand about if Dale comes to your school, he's not installing this for the kids. The purpose is not to teach the kids how to run fast. It's to teach the coaches how to install this and run this. And so by the end of day two, he's running drills that they're really not ready for, because he's in week 9, week 10, week 11, week 12 drills to show them to the coaches, when your guys have only been doing this for a couple hours. And so but just watching that, he installed a warm-up, that we'll be sharing the video of that. It's on the website now under the Q&A for Athletic Speed and Movement members. It's under the January Q&As, but we went through, got the film of it and everything, and just seeing that, and again, just listening the amount of knowledge that he has, the things that he tries, the number of things that this is what sucks about not having the audio, is the number of things that from day one and day two, but the ones from day two are the ones that we lost the audio on. I'm just thinking, like, this would be an awesome clip. We could put this somewhere, we can use this, because this is just amazing stuff, of him teaching, some little thing that you in a nutshell, it just impresses you, because you can't
Right.
really use it without using the entire program. Quite honestly, it's a progression program. You need the entire. I had never thought about this before, but he started, he was pointing it out earlier last week, and then as I was watching the install, I was like, oh my gosh, I see it, because it was really day one and day two. He talks about really the first half, and we're just starting week 5, and really the first 4 weeks of the program is teaching you how to run. And at the end of that first 4 weeks, you have the core drills. So the short cycle, and the rhythm run, and the stride increase is in at the end of the first 4 weeks. And just the difference in those kids at the end of 4 weeks. And we went to week 5, which is where we start using the lateral run and the linear weave drill. So you start getting more movement into the action. And I don't know, it's incredible to watch. And it was incredible to watch Dale, who I met for the first, saw him do this years ago, and the core is still the same, but he's just constantly updating. He's not sitting around and letting it go. Like, it's constantly. One of the head coach, who was my head coach when we first brought Dale in, back in 2012 or 13 or whatever it was, a decade ago, he came to day 2, just to see Dale. I hadn't seen him since because he brought him back in 2016. So he came just to see Dale and see it again, and see it, because he's an AD now, so he doesn't get to run it. But just to see it all again, and he was like, this is something I totally missed until he mentioned. I kind of it crossed my mind, but I just didn't think that much about it. But he said, when did he change to the arms? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, it used to always be shoulders, 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 shoulders. The shoulder controls, it used to be the shoulder controls the legs, right?
Right.
Well, it's the shoulder controls the arm, which controls the hip, and the hip controls the leg. And he's using the term arm, focusing on the arm rather than just focusing on the shoulder more, with the keeping the wrist locked, because the hand is part of the forearm, which is part of the L in the arm. And it's little things like that that, because he's still out there teaching it every day and teaching it in high school environments, teaching it in college environments, teaching it with professional athletes, teaching it in different sports. He now, I think, works a lot more with other sports. I know I've seen basketball installs with him, volleyball installs with him, soccer. He works with professional baseball players and is working, with some professional baseball players. So, translating all of that and being able to translate it to different sports. Um, it's just it's amazing to watch. That was my level up. Was even though I work with Dale so much now, and in fact, we just passed 1 year since we created Athletic Speed and Movement, and I certainly had a better grasp. But from installing it again and then seeing Dale install it again, and seeing little tweaks and stuff, it definitely leveled up myself as a speed coach, and also just seeing this transformation in these kids. Because I mean, the kid that he was using as the demo really, there's always like one kid that kind of has, this kind of the leader and will step up and demo and doesn't worry about it. And he kind of used this one kid a lot, and the the kid was really rigid and really struggling with it early, and then seeing him like day 2 and the transformation there. um good looking kid. I don't know what he's like as a football player, but good looking kid. He's the kid that looks like a linebacker, but he was stiff. And then by the end of and again, at the end of day 2, you've just done all the drills so that the coaches can see them. Even in the normal progression, we do them 3 times, and he'll do them twice just so that the coach sees it. We move on because we have a limited amount of time. It's not about teaching the kids, but the kids obviously get it.
Right.
It's an incredible system, and just watching it again was huge.
I got somebody reached out to me on Twitter the other day. It was a coach that's using the system, and his question was like, "Hey, I'm done with week 12. What do we do now?" And I just told him like, you can take a break, and because he's got freshmen coming in a few weeks, right? They're going to get to join his team, and I just told him like, you can take a break and wait on them to get there and start over, or you can repeat those last few weeks or 4 weeks. Like it's your program now. If you feel like you're going to lose some ground, then don't stop, right? I just basically put it back in his lap. Like make it what you will.
Well, the answer to that is Dale has multiple programs that we'll be bringing up, that are next steps, and we'll be bringing those together. Probably the first will be the lateral series. Then we have a lateral series. We have a quick cycle series, a mixed cycle series. But the answer to that ultimately is, and yes, when your freshmen come, you should run your freshmen through it. You don't want to just run. I mean, it doesn't hurt to run the kids through it again. We've been doing that for years, and I found out from Dale like that's not the answer. But just start running drills that focus on movement drills. So, for example, I would work a linebacker drop, shuffle, drive. So where we're transitioning and just using all of that movement and transitioning from a a sprint to a lateral run to a shuffle to a sprint or something like that.
Yeah.
Just doing movement, football movement, where for 5 minutes. And so this is something we're going to incorporate into our practices, is for 5 minutes. We've done it in the past, but we're not going to do a specific, speed training, but we'll do 5 minutes of go to your position group and do a football drill where we're doing a football drill, but we're focusing on the,
running
the speed aspects of it.
Yeah. Yeah. But one of the things he brought up was just how different, and he's hopefully, coach, if you're listening, please do. We talked about him sending his data. He's going to do his times and testing, but he said, right now they've not tested. They can't show any proof on paper, but he is so excited about how everyone just looks the part now. Like he took, from top to bottom of the roster now looks like they know how to run, which there's a lot of coaches
that's literally the first 4 weeks they learn to run.
They don't get to see that. And maybe you don't even know what you're missing because you're so focused on getting scheme in and getting those kids back from baseball. And then we got to go to 7-on-7 and next it's season. And like, we don't, when do we have time to focus on it? So it's really neat to see somebody that's prioritizing that and already getting that
Yep.
that feedback. So I actually wrote an email about that, went out today, I think. So that's 2 weeks
Mhm.
ago for some
Yep.
of you. If you're not an Athletic Speed and Movement member, sign up so you can get some emails from us. But you get those little tidbits, I guess. So yeah, my level up has been, one, I started my graphics kind of side hustle. I've only mentioned it a couple times here on the podcast and at the end, so people probably aren't even hearing it. But I'm starting to try to make some graphics, and I've sold one. It's been really neat, but I've put out some testers and pushed some things out there to some guys that are in my little circle. Like, hey, flash these things around. Let's start getting some advertisement going on. So that's been one deal, is just taking another skill, like you said, Joe, just wanting to learn something, learning how that's going on, and trying to make myself better there. But that led me to, I had a program, and let me make sure I'm going to say it. I'm gonna give them a little shout out here but I don't want to say the wrong name. Coachingshare.com. So that is like a kind of like CoachTube or something like that. It's another place to get coaching
Mhm.
products. And they reached out and just said that they'd listen to some podcasts between you and I, and Kenny and I, and the stuff I'm putting out online, and they liked it. And so, which felt really good to me, because I don't know if y'all know or not, but I've only been doing this 4 years and podcasting for 3 now, which has been really cool. But the imposter syndrome is still very real. Like, I get into a room full of coaches and I'm listening to them talk scheme, and I'm like, I think they know more than me, right? Like, maybe I don't actually belong here. Whether that be, the guy I went and worked with coaches, and like I walked in, and my one of the guys on staff told me, "Oh yeah, you sell that stuff online, but we all know that's not real. We all know that doesn't work in real life, right?" Like, um, well, yes, it does, but that's the kind of feedback that we get when you sell football online. People constantly want to tear it down, especially if they're insecure about it, right? Because now they've got to prove you, the internet guy, are wrong. So the imposter syndrome is very, very real. And having someone reach out and be like, "Hey, dude, we want what you're saying on some type of a product to put out there." That's just really neat to me, and that's my next thing, is to develop a one or two small classes, I guess, if you will,
Mhm.
one or two products to push out. Once again, I'm gonna stay away from X's and O's for now, because I'm just stealing it from you and Kenny and a local guy, and I have no reason to repackage that. In fact, I got really pissed off. I saw a coach out of Washington the other day has a Throw Deep Publishing, I think, of the R4 system, which is created by Dub Maddox, who lives and works and coaches right here next to me. So I was pretty furious. He didn't even change the title of it. Like, he literally sold the R4 system like it was his own. And he probably has something worked out with Dub, and he's just talking about the way they use it at their school. But um, it was just very weird. I never saw any credit given or anything, and I was like, I definitely cannot be that guy that, like, hey, for 4 years I've just been collecting stuff, and now I'm going to teach everybody else how I run it. Like, that doesn't make sense. So I want to stay away from X's and O's and just do the leadership right now, that program building side, because that's what I've been doing that for almost 20 years. So never did I really think about it that way. Like, hey, I think I could sell this. But the longer I've been in coaching, the more I realize there's people out there that don't know that stuff. They don't know what they're doing. We did um, I wrote a couple articles, number one on leadership for the Headsets magazine, and that really opened my eyes to, like, the more I write about this, the more I realize, like, there's coaches that never had a mentor in leadership. Like, it was just do whatever the head coach did, and he was probably shitty at it, right? Like, he probably wasn't that good. Unfortunately, I've suffered through some jobs with that same mentality. Like, the leadership's not good. And then I've ran into guys that had no formal training and they were really good at it. So they both exist. But so I think that's my level up, is I'm just going to try to take what I know and teach it to
Mhm.
better improve my ability to do it. Um, and I just think that'll help make me a better coach. If I'm able to teach those little things, I'll be able to teach the football to players, to coaches. Stepping in my first year as an OC this year, it's going to be pretty fun to put in a brand new system at a brand new school and all new coaches on staff. So it's like there's no continuity. We're all fresh, right? All raw. And so, I think that teaching this will help me be able to teach things later. So that's what I'm doing to be better.
Sure.
So someday I'll be like Joe and have my own website with things.
It's It's a decision.
I don't know if it's the right one yet.
Yeah. Well,
I decided I'm not teaching this year, so I'm just a lay coach. So I'll make a stipend, and everything else I've got to make up in the online world. So I don't know how you do $45,000 a year or 42 or whatever they pay us here in Oklahoma, but I'm gonna have to figure that one out. So lots of leveling up, Joe. Lots and lots of leveling up.
there you go.
Sweet. Well, let's get into tonight's topic. Oh, before we do, you want to pay the bills here, sir?
Yeah, you can. We have a lot of changes happening at JDFB, so I'll stick with what I think will still be there, which is check out joedanielfootball.com/rules. We have the 40 Coach Simple rules for football coaches that want to win more games. You can get that download. It is 40 tips, tricks, tactics, strategies that I have discovered over the years in various categories: offense, defense, drills, philosophy, non-negotiables for every position on the field that can help you win a game. And I believe that one of those 40 things in there, again, we talk about, finding that little nugget that you're going to be able to use. One of those 40 things can win you a football game. So you can go download that for free. Just enter your email address at joedanielfootball.com/rules.
Awesome. Real quick, I just want to pitch my graphics. I am doing graphics now. So if your program is you as a single coach, like I have a package for that as solo coaches package, because I know that we all don't want to pay for a whole program. Sometimes we're just trying to advertise for ourselves. But I have program package for just football and then for your whole school. So I can do all of the sports for you. So if you're a person in need of that, reach out to me, Chamberlain Football Consulting at gmail.com. And I mean, even if you just need a quote and just talk about it and see what options are out there, I'm okay with that. I don't want to take myself too seriously yet. So just if you're in the need of graphics for any reason, let me know. I'd love to help you celebrate your kids on social media and help build your program. Sweet. We don't have to talk about Athletic Speed Movement because we just did. So go to athleticspeedmovement.com, sign up. Question 1, Joe. Tonight we're talking about counter, all flavors of counter, GT, GY, GH. If there's more than that, sure, use that one. If you don't name your backs and your tight ends H's and Y's, then whatever you call them. But so first question is a super simple one, and that is, what is counter?
I mean, counter very simply is, it can refer to just about anything that has a element of misdirection in it, where you are showing going one direction, at least something about your play design is going one direction, and then you are going the other direction. That can be, everything from our counter doesn't really have backfield misdirection to having a lot of backfield misdirection. And, in general, when we talk about counter, we just mean misdirection of some sort of tendency breaker, key breaker. But as we get into the actual play, counter, as most of us refer to it, it is pulling and kicking out, normally with the guard. It doesn't have to be, but normally kicking out with the guard. Normally power is kicking out with a back, and counter is kicking out with a guard. Kicking out with the guard and then wrapping with a second player, usually either the H, a sniffer back, something like that. The tackle, which is, the GT counter tray, or sometimes the Y. It could be anybody, really. And so kicking out with that guard on kind of almost like a long trap, and then wrapping with the second guy is the play counter, the normal counter play that we'd be focusing on. So, when we talk GH or GT or GY, that's referring to who's pulling: guard and H-back, guard and tackle, guard and tight end, whoever you want to pull for that.
I do want to talk about kind of historically where, I can remember counter. I grew up in a wishbone offense for my first couple of years on the varsity side. And so counter for us was essentially like what I think people call scissors now, but you still had that backfill action, right? Like everybody looks like they're going over here and it's ISO like it's been 100 times tonight, or triple option. And then one dude is just putting his foot in the ground and coming back.
Right.
And I love seeing how offensive have modernized, but we keep those old terms and we kind of just make it a new play because we're doing a lot of the same stuff. Kenny, in his system, his counter is like jet sweep, and then you hand it to the H-back going back the other way, or the wing back, right? So
Mhm.
you kind of get that counteraction. I think it's probably just maybe even power. I'm not even sure if it's truly power there with the pulling scheme, but I just
Yeah,
like
so
kind of like seeing how people tie in the counter step or whatever the misdirection is and make their version of counterplay. And then there's those of us who are now stuck in 11 or 20 personnel, whatever you want to call it, and we're running H back counter a lot of the
right.
times.
Yeah, so we our counter off of truck toss is the H trap, which is faking the toss and giving to the H back coming back underneath. But that is a trap play. It is a counter. It is a misdirection, but it's not the counter play like we would talk about here.
Yeah,
So it's just again, there's an element of misdirection. We're going to do things with jet and all of that. We can run our counter behind jet sweep too, behind the jet fake too. So any of those things can, like I said, any of them can create a counter misdirection look. But we'll really be focusing on the more conventional GT counter.
awesome. Yep. So counter, like you said, it's just I even have recently learned this year a new way to teach it from Cameron, a guy that I've been working with, and he teaches it as alternate power. And we kind of discussed that before
Mhm.
we hit record, right? Because in power, you gotta in two back power, not one back power, you weirdos. But an H is usually going to be your kicker, and the G is pulling the wrap. You literally just alternate that. You just switch their blocking assignments, and so I thought that was a really neat way to put that into containers if you're a Joe guy, or buckets if you're listening to Ohio State talk, how to put plays in buckets. But man, you can really put that into a section and teach. Okay, we're just teaching power, and then you just switch the blocks. Or, I just think it's really neat how we've done that. But block down, kick out, wrap, let's go, right? I mean, that's kind of the modern day gap scheme. So,
We talk about in the pistol power offense system, we only have two blocking schemes. We have a gap scheme and we have a zone scheme. And in the gap scheme, we run power and counter. And power is the blocking rules on the front side. I mean, it's essentially we try to get a combo, but it's essentially down, down, kick out, roll, wrap the backer. So the front side rules for blocking the power and then kick out with the H back and then wrap with the guard to the front side linebacker. When we run the counter, and we do the same. So in our terminology, um, we've called it power right and counter right, and we've used words, and none of that matters. I have coaches ask me, and they get caught up in this stuff, especially newer coaches are like, we don't. Should we use the words? Should we use numbers? I don't care. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. All that matters is you get the information to your kids. I like using the numbers because it's very short on a wristband, and I can just yell it out, and teams aren't going to know. Especially with our passing game, I can just yell out real
yeah,
quick, rather than yelling out power right. You know,
right.
I can go 24, and it's if I only have to do that once, it's better with our passing game because I can just yell it out. And, the numbers aren't as obvious, whatever. But I don't worry about yelling out the numbers. But our power is 24 to the right and 25 to the left, and our counter is 24 counter and 25 counter. Um, so the blocking scheme is again, our front side of it literally for us only changes the guard and the H. It only swaps them. It does nothing else as far as the blocking scheme goes. Um, the only thing it doesn't change the blocking scheme, but they have to, it does because there's no tight end usually to the counter side. And so we have to know that, the tackle doesn't have a tight end to combo with. So,
Right.
if a four tech is going to get kicked out as opposed to getting down block or comboed, just as an example. So that's a little bit different, but it's still, the call would be a combo at the tight end, but it's like, it's very quick teaching. It's like, what would you normally do here? I combo at the tight end. Well, can you do that? Nope, there's no tight end there. Correct. So don't do that. We just teach, it takes 2 seconds to teach that, but it's the same play. And then the same thing if we want to do, now we have to set it up if we want to do GT because we're either going to have to read a backside end or kick a backside end with somebody. And my preference on GT is I like to run the quarterback on it. So I like to have a fake to the back and run the quarterback on it on GT. But we can do it with a read. And that's a great play, by the way. I don't do it very much, but we could do it with a read. We haven't run much GT. We have OT, which is a draw counter, which is essentially dart. And all that does is it changes it so that the tackle is the kick out, the onside tackle is the kick out, and the backside tackle is the wrap.
Nice.
I've called it TT. I've called it OT. We call it OT, and we just tell them it's tackle over, tackle out. Backside tackle, come over. Frontside tackle, turn out. But that action takes a little bit longer for the tackle to clear, so we run that as a draw, which would have been a great play for us in the past. But again, relatively the same teaching. You just can't
you
combo.
really get that sounds like single back power to me, right? You get that kick
It's
out by a
dart.
tackle.
Yeah, it's similar.
Dart.
Yeah, it's dart. Yeah, it's similar.
Yeah.
But it worked. But because we're working it as a draw, and I talked about this before. We played a team. In 2017, we were 90. We were maybe 100% pass out of gun, and no body. We were lower out of under center. We were probably 80 or 90% run, but we had our play action. So we ran from under center and ran play action from under center, and we threw from gun. And never a problem. The first team that got it was week 10. Best team on the schedule too, but the first team that figured it out. So we played them again second round of the playoffs, and we put that dart draw in at a gun. That was our only run play at a gun. We ran for 165 yards on it.
Let's
It
go.
wasn't enough. They were still very much better than us at that point in time, but it was 165 yards because they were flying out every time we were in gun. And so they were the only ones that picked up on it, and we had a counter to it. We that was our counter to that.
That's awesome.
Was against it's a tendency breaker. We were in gun 100% of the time. We find something to do that's not in gun, or passing 100% from gun. Just do something that wasn't.
Yeah, that still looked like it. You still sold it too. Right?
Yeah, and it's still a draw play. So it was up and then setting it down, and it was very successful for us. It kept us in a game that we probably shouldn't have been in.
So you've made mention of GT and GH and GY now, and so obviously these are kind of your three base variations.
Mm-hmm.
You can pull somebody else, right?
Sure.
I'm working with a system right now where you can pull 3 or 4 or 5 guys. Like you can pull the whole house, but those are kind of your three base variations that people tag things off of. So why do we need those? Like why do we carry all 3 of those into a season, or would you even carry all 3 of those into a season?
I have never started the season with all 3. I've certainly the draw play is something that we usually add in late. GT is rarely in our package because I like GT more if I were going to be like I said, I like to run the quarterback on it, or I like to either do it out of split back gun with no tight end. Because one of the advantages of counter as opposed to power, I don't love power without a tight end. Now, we had this come up on our forum the other day, and essentially we have a coach who has been told by his, he's running the middle school or the JV program or whatever, and the head coach has said, no tight ends. They're not going to run a tight end, period. Which I don't agree with, but whatever, it's the head coach's time,
That's right.
And so that's what he's got to deal with. And he was asking, what should we do? Keep power. Yeah, you can still run power with no tight end. I always have a tight end, so I'm going to run it to the tight end. And I like counter the opposite way because, again, the guard pull is a better angle and is essentially a kick out, a long trap. Right. And especially we can get it to the weak side if I use a tight end and you're in a 40 front, I can run it to the weak side where you're probably going to have a 1 tech or a 2 and I get that white side, B gap open, kick out, wrap. It's very clean. And if it's to a odd front, then again, we talk about red and white side. Red side being reduced. So there's somebody lined up in the B gap, the old 5-2 terminology. It's built from Coach Mountjoy. And then I don't know. I'm not saying I don't know that he made it up, but that's kind of where it comes from. And then the white side is the wide side. There's nobody in the B gap, basically. So counter is a much better angle to the white side than it is to the red side. Power with a tight end is great to the red side. And so, we're going to really look to run power to the tight end side and counter to the opposite side most of the time. But I have had success when we were more spread of running GT, doing it out of either single back gun where the quarterback is a runner, where we could run GT, fake to the back and have him handle the backside end and then run the quarterback. Run the quarterback behind the kick is basically going to be down on the front side. So you don't get as much of a combo on this. It's more of a down and a kick. The only time you really get a combo is if you happen to run it to the 3-tech side, and it's kind of rare. We wouldn't do that very much. We prefer not to, really. And it'll work, but prefer not to. So I like that play. We had a lot of success out of that one year, probably 2016. We had a lot of success with that play, which was funny because we really couldn't do much, but that play worked. Everything else didn't work. So the problem is when your only play that works is a counter, it's really hard to set it up.
Right.
Because you don't get much time to set the play up because you're now in 3rd and 9, and you don't really want to run your counter play at that point. But in GY, I have almost never run. And that is because just teaching an additional player. I've run it, and I just call it Y counter. I don't call it GY. I just call it Y counter. And everybody knows what it is. It just means that the Y is the guy that's doing the wrapping. I would do that more with the right guy. I would do that out of a what we call an off alignment, so I would go like Pro 2 off, which for us would mean that the tight end is to the right and he is off the ball. So the Z is on. And the H is in a 2, which is a wing back to the left. So it's essentially a flex bone alignment.
Right.
And what that gives you is you can run counter either way. Either guy. So you don't
power, right? It's just with the Y guy is out there.
Right. It's why it's so if I go I can go H. If I go to the right, and from that alignment, if I go to the right, the guard is going to kick out and the H is going to wrap. It should be regular 24 counter. If I want to go to the left, I'm going to call it 25 Y counter. And I've also done things. This isn't a counter, but I've done it where we don't pull anybody. So I call it power, but we call it 24 HY. And that means that the H is going to kick out and the Y is going to wrap. I bring them in both in sniffer positions, and I can run it either way. I can go 24 HY or 25 YH and just down block everybody up front. Essentially,
it almost ends up like no pull power, right? Or no.
It's what it is. No, yeah, that's what it is. And I only like that. I really like that in goal line situations where I don't want to have an opening, short yardage situations if I've got the right guys. But to be honest with you, I've never carried all 3 in a season. I don't know that I've ever run all 3 in a season. I know for sure I've never installed all 3 at the beginning of the season. I don't know that I've ever installed 2 at the beginning of the season. Out of the last, I don't know, however many years, 8 years that I've run this system, as a coordinator, 6 years, 7 years as a coordinator, and I've never installed both, and probably only once in early on. Later in the season, I might say, hey, let's install this, let's try it. Maybe we've just morphed into a team that's spending a lot of time. We're spending a lot more time in gun than I expected, so let's put in the GT. Or we thought we were going to be more of a spread team, and we're spending a lot more time with the tight end and an H back, so let's get the GH in. And actually, there's only been one year where I started with GT and not GH. That's only happened once.
I'm pretty interested to see how this year goes. I'm gonna forego power for quite some time. It's gonna be my last install in spring, and we're just gonna try to live in GT counter, GH counter, and duo. So we will see. I just really want to, and listen you talk about the reduced side and wide side. I obviously need to go back to joedanielfootball.com and restudy those, so to make sure all the alignments make sense. but the film that I've accrued to watch to kind of learn this system that I'm wanting to install, they just don't run a lot of power. And he kind of told me that up front, like we're a GT counter, a little bit of inside zone. They don't even really run duo very much. They like an inside zone and insert the H back to the weak side. So like when you do cut inside zone back, you've already got an H back blocking that backside inside linebacker. So kind of a zone insert scheme. But so I think it'd be interesting because you being the guy that just runs power in one counter, and I'm going to carry two of them basically, GT and GH, and we'll see what GY looks like. I'm going to a small school, so that's going to be the same kid. You're an H back on the line or off the line, so I'm not even changing terminology. He'll just know that his pull's got to be a little different.
Yeah, as far as the only time that I want to run the GY, and I have this conversation with Coach Mountjoy, is seeing an opportunity for us to use some two tight end sets, and that's the only time that I'll probably run what you might consider a GY with him on, is from a two tight end set, and being able to run the counter that way. That's the only time that I see value to it. Otherwise, I see more value out of the H. Just the angle, everything's easier, faster.
I guess, the biggest issues, the way I plan on doing it, and it probably why I will have to carry multiple variations of it, is because now, if powers tend to, traditionally always strong and counters traditionally always weak because it's the counter when they overload to your tight end side, right, or your wing side, now you have something to hit back. Mine is just going to be the other version of counter is my counter, right? So I can line up with an H back, pull GT, and I have an extra down block. And maybe we've got him in the pass game now. I can hit a little pop pass or whatever, kind of make a counter pass play out of it. So that would be why I'm going to have to carry both versions, is because GT becomes my power play.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of, and we'll kind of see how it works out. We see a lot of tight front stuff around here, odd, guys in 4 eyes and in a 3-4. To a true tight end, they like to walk down, obviously, like just about everybody does. So I'm anxious to see how these smaller schools are handling an H. Like, are you going to commit a dude to the line of scrimmage or not? So that's another reason I want to carry multiple variations of, is because if I'm not worried about him coming off the edge to an H back, then I can just run GH counter, right? I'm the defensive end I got to worry about. The center can just, or I'm sorry, the offensive tackle can just set that 4 eye or whatever I need to make happen there. And if they do, then maybe we just run the GT, and that way he's back in space thinking he's defending a pass anyway. So just to help my kids who are going to be smaller linemen, not as good, not have to worry about those wide defensive end and handling backside pressure.
And it goes back to, formations are just formations. They're not your offense. And you use the formations to try to manipulate the defense. You use motions to manipulate the defense. You use shifts to manipulate the defense. Those are always at your disposal. And as long as your base run game is your base run game, one of the things that I think, the only thing that I think we have to remember is, now, if you have really smart kids, this is not the case, but most of us don't have kids that can process all of this. That formation with that motion, it might be the same play to your 5 offensive linemen, depending on whether or not there's a tight end next to him or not. But, let's say that I want to run counter away from the tight end, or, to a tackle side, no tight end. Well, the offensive line doesn't care. Doesn't care if it's bunch backside, doesn't care if it's 3x1, doesn't care if it's 2x2. None of that matters. We're running it to a side without a guy. So the offensive line doesn't care. But for somebody, that running back, that H back, let's say we're going to bring the H back in motion to do it. Well, my H back, most of my H backs, I can just tell you from the way we run Ham Pro 3, or we run Pro 3 or Ham Pro 3, which is either lining him up. Let's say we're going to run power to the right, just as power play. Either lining him up in the guard tackle gap so they can kick out, or motioning him is a different play to him, not to the other 10 guys. The other 10 guys, it's not a different play. The quarterback, right, under center, to the other 10 guys, it's the same play. The quarterback's footwork changes. If I run it under center instead of pistol or gun, the backs changes slightly on gun. The quarterback's still supposed to get it to him on under center, but on gun, it's the same. So we can manipulate the defense that way, but we have to be aware of this becomes a different play. And it's the same thing when we talk about GT, GH, GY. We look at it and we go, oh, same play. Same thing if H back on the line or H back off the line or Y or all, with the same guy on the line or off the line. Oh, it's the same play. Well, for him, if he always does it from off the line and we go, hey, this week we're going to do it on the line. It's like, how am I going to get there? I've never done that before. It's like, well, it's really simple. You're going to get there. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, why is this hard? But it's hard, but it is, it just is. These little tweaks can be very, very valuable for us. The shifts, the motions, running with the quarterback with, faking it to the back and then having the quarterback run it. All of those things will change the timing of the play. And for one or two guys, they will change the play. Now, on the other side, it changes the play for them too, because you create a different look. You break their defense with a formation. They got to adjust. They got to move. They got to do something. They got to check, whatever it is. So it changes the play for them too. So can I change it enough that it affects them more than it affects us?
Right.
And that's the flexibility of the offense. The other thing, though, just getting back to, you're talking about not running power. I've had teams that I've worked with and teams that I've coached, not teams that I've coached directly, but my old school that kept running the same system after I went to Amelia. They had a couple of years, very successful years, where their best play was counter. And they'd run counter 18 times a game. So what becomes the counter?
Power.
Right. So if we're always running the ball opposite and again, exact same offensive system. So they're always running the ball opposite the H-back, right? The H-back always lines. If the H-back is on the right, the ball's going to the left. And so when they actually ran power, that's the counter, because the tip-off was if the H-back is over here. That's their best play is the counter play. And so when we go back to, we can sit here and talk about counter, GT, GY, counter tray, whatever, and all of that stuff, and it's called counter. But the reality goes back to the original definition, which is misdirection and a key breaker, a tendency breaker, constraint play, whatever you want to call it, something that does that. You can't just sit there and go, every time they do this, I'm going to do this.
Right.
And like counter, I guess another thing is when to use counter. There's no reason in using counter if they don't do any adjustment to your power, right? If you run power, let's say that your power and your counter, let's say in our pro style offense, if we run power and you line up in a base 4-4 front, 4-2, whatever, and you line up in that 4-2 box, and we run power to the tight end, whether it's to the right or the left, and the backside linebacker doesn't follow the pulling guard, and they don't blitz to it, they don't shift with the motion, they don't do anything, they're just statues, and we're getting 8 yards a pop. We're never calling counter. Why would we? Why would we throw the ball? Why would we do any of that? We got to play as quick as 8 yards of carry. So
run it, baby. Let's go.
I've got to convince you to move. Whether that is some teams will blitz at our H-back. Some teams will slide with the motion, as we like to motion the H-back a lot. Some teams will tighten in the strong safety. So now we've got our toss play open up, or our power play, or power pass. There's different things that they'll do. Some teams will widen the tackles out. Now we got to go inside zone or wedge or something inside. But there's no reason to run a counter if they're not giving you, if I run toss and the like, we go back to the H trap, and the counter misdirection off of that is H trap for us, off the toss. The toss misdirection is the H trap. Well, if your linebackers aren't flying with the toss, but there's no purpose in running H trap, right? It doesn't matter. There's no reason to. It's like zone read. I mean, it's no different from option, because again, this is pre-snap or predictive play calling compared to post-snap play calling.
Right.
If I run zone read and the defensive end sits outside every single time, I'm never keeping it. Why? Why would I keep it? Why would you Oh, he hasn't kept it all game. Well, there's been no read telling him to keep it. Some coaches get out there and they go, well, you got to keep it once or twice to keep them honest. No, they're already honest.
Right.
They're,
If they
they're as
change,
honest
your
as they
read
can
will
be. You're
change.
running inside zone on 5 guys. So that's where you've got to know when to use the counter. You don't just call it. When I first started coaching, I'm going on forever here, but I
No, it's okay. That's what
when I first
podcasting is.
started learning about series based play calling, and I sometimes hear it called sequential. My understanding of that, and I didn't pull this out of thin air. There's plenty of people that think this. My understanding of it was I'm going to run power, counter, power pass, power, counter, power pass, power, count, because it's a series. And I'm going to run power. And then the next time I'm going to do it this way, and you're going to go that way. And the next time I'm going to do this. And then now you're thinking this. And then I'm going to go back to the beginning. And I'm just going to run it in sequence. And that's not how it works. Right.
No.
If whatever the first play, the main play, and it could be counter, it's usually, something else, like it says power. And by the way, we counter step. I talked about the backfield action. We counter step power and counter the exact same in the backfield. So the counter play has a true counter step. We step the direction of the H back. The power play, we step opposite the H back. I do that because part of what I like about that is they always open up as if it is outside zone. So, and the quarterback reverse pivots. So if you look at if you freeze it on the first step,
It's outside zone.
it's outside zone.
That's awesome.
So, and inside zone, by the way, is the same. He opens up like it's outside zone and then he comes downhill. Outside zone, he opens up, pointed at the tight end, and then goes at the tight end. And counter and power, he opens up at the backside tight end or where he'd be, and then he rocks back across and runs his power or his counter. So there's always a counter step on it. There's even a counter step on power. So, I don't know. That's just the way that our system's developed. We've done it different ways. We've done it where there was no counter step on power. We've done it where, the counter step was on power and not on counter too. There's different things that we were trying out. I like it just being the same every single time. I think you overcomplicate it. So again, it literally just changes the G and the H.
Awesome.
But yeah, I used to think sequential play calling was power counter, power pass, or power counter, or the old, buck sweep, buck trap, waggle, and then run through it again. Just like, why do they have 2 series? Don't they just keep doing the one series? I guess they get bored. I was thinking when I learned about series, I would think, my thought was, okay, they come out series, right? Is a series of downs. So I'm like, well, they come out the first time they get the ball, they go,
it's all buck. This is
the
buck series.
Buck sweep, buck trap, waggle. Buck sweep, buck trap, waggle. Well, then the next time they get it, they go, down, whatever
belly is.
Yeah, belly down, all that stuff. So and they, just rotate through a different series, and then, maybe you could just have a whole different offense. A different group of kids come out and they run the down series, the belly series. And
hey, what's funny is we played a team like that a couple of years ago. We played a team that on one series they were in the spread, the next series they were in wing T. So
yeah,
and I'm pretty sure they might have been running the plays.
That is not rare. We had a team, and quite honestly, I've never beat them. They're not on our schedule anymore. But we had a lot of games when we were not very good that were closer with them than they should be. I think the head coach wanted to be spread, but they were so much bigger than maybe not everyone else. And maybe it's one of those things where, because they were a bigger, higher level.
Right.
So the thought process being, when we get into the playoffs, we aren't just going to be able to do just push people around. But in district, with a lot of the teams, they could push people around. We would hang around in games because he had his spread offense in there. And then second half, we've hung around too long, and he puts the power I offense in. And it's like, and as soon as you saw the power I, you're like, God dang it.
That's the end.
He just stayed with the spread. Like, if he had just stayed with the spread, we could have had this one. But as soon as he figures it out and he's got, 280 plus across on the offensive line, he brings in 2 tight ends who are the other 280, 290 pound kids. And he's got a fullback who's a defensive tackle for him because they're 2 platoon. And it was just like, well,
it was fun, boys.
And then we're breaking the umbrella because one of those corners has got to get down there. because
Yeah.
they ain't throwing it anymore. They've
No.
they, they've done made that decision. No more balls going in the air, and you're not getting the ball back if without us going to the end zone.
I know we've
Yeah,
kind of already hit on this a little bit. Our last question, we're not really. I don't have any time hacks, but we start getting that hour. Advantages and disadvantages of each of these different variations of counter.
I think we've
So
touched on them a lot, but like I
yeah,
said, I like the GT with no tight end. The GH is just fits our system because it's just flopping the H back, and we're going opposite the H back. So we're going to make. That's another thing is how do you make this a counter? Well, we make the H back really shiny. Like I said, the backfield is the same. We do use a counter step, but we use it on both.
right.
So if that was all we did, it wouldn't work as well. But since we use it with the outside zone, it does. But um, it's how do you set it up? And we make the H really shiny, right? We motion the H probably 50% of snaps when we're doing really well with it. And so we're running power and you're looking at the H back. It's just like, with Kenny talking about running a counter off of a jet. Well, you make the thing going the other way really shiny. So we make the H so shiny and run power so many times that your kids are just like, H is over here. I'm not waiting for anything else. And then that's when the counterplay happens. The GT, the weakness of the strength of the GH is obviously by not pulling the other tackle, the tackle, we feel like we are like you're not going to get any penetration backside. So that's one where the GT, you need somebody to kick out the backside end, or you got to read the backside end, one of the two. And so that's where you either need that extra back in the backfield because, and the H could do it. The I formation GT. Look, if I was an I formation team, or I could get into an I formation, and we've done that too. The I formation team, the fullback's in a great position to kick out the end. Our H back usually isn't unless we line him up with a zero alignment, which is an I formation.
Right.
And then we have to be we really need to be an under center team because, or be under center for that play, which I think we're going to be a lot more under center. I don't like how much we've gone to being gun dependent, really. Um, one of the things about that is you get to the second or third center. I've got 3 or 4 guys now at my past schools, especially at Amelia. I had 6 guys who could snap, and I don't know what it is here, but I have trouble finding one. And if I get to the third guy, we need to go under center. And so we can't be
Right.
dependent on that because we can't have it. Because the timing of if the snaps aren't consistently good, it ruins the timing of the play.
Yeah, timing's off. Yeah.
And then the timing is so critical, especially with us, like you're talking about being a smaller offensive line. We've got to minimize the amount of time that they have to stay engaged in blocks. They can learn how to take the first 2 steps. They can learn how to take phenomenal angles. They can learn how to climb to backers. They can do all that. But at 185, he cannot stay engaged with a D1 tackle. We got to get in his way and get past him before he finishes devouring us, right? At least make it take a little bit of time for him to devour you, and that'll give us a chance. And we can probably do that. I can probably get tangled up in his feet for a little bit, and give you a chance. And GY, I think, is just more of a formationally GY,
Right.
meaning pulling the guy on the line of scrimmage. I think that's just more of a formational advantage than anything else.
Yeah, especially you've been running power to a formation on all night,
Yeah.
then yes, you get that backwards counter.
Yeah. Like I said,
You know,
I like the
another
idea of doing it from a 2 tight as well.
you talk about formationally, yes, too tight, and then a lot of people are going with these tight end nubs formations now,
Mhm.
and I think that's where GT for me just gives you a beautiful. They have to go over there and cover those 3 guys, and how are they going to do it? They're going to get 4 over 3, so they've got their safeties committed. They've got a corner that didn't switch because DCs don't do that. I'm going to kick everybody else, and I'm going to run counter, probably with my quarterback, like you talked about. I'm going to run GT counter to a corner who is either going to step up and get kicked or hang out and then let my supposed to be a kicker go ahead and wrap too. And now I've got 2 wrappers, and ladies and gentlemen, we're off to the races. So, you start talking formationally, man, you deal with that formation, and now you've got GY going to the trips where they're really focused on making sure that trips doesn't hurt them, and then GT away from it because they're so committed over there. Once again, they open up backside. So I'm so glad I switched to the light side, I'll be honest with you. It's gonna be so fun to just pick on people's who all wanna go man anymore and be like, "That's fine. Let's play football on a phone booth, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
great."
It's I definitely again, I mean, I get a lot of work on the defensive side from JDFB, but
Yeah.
there are some elements of not running my own. Um, at the end of Dale's, so again, the coach was on staff, got a head job, and I think he's looking at running our. I think he's running our 4-2-5 system, and or some elements of it. And so he was asking me about the strong safety alignment because ours is we're different, right? We're the 5x5 and the key read and everything. And he asked a very simple question about the alignment, which turned into a 15-minute dissertation on why 5x5 works and how he's don't go till and going through the key read and the timing of reaching, of getting there and ripping the block, not having to stay engaged in the block, not having to sit and wait on the block, and being deep enough that by being patient, I can fold in on an inside run still and make a tackle for a 4-yard gain. But I can still also, I'm in a position to get to my drop and get to the top of the numbers in a cover 3 drop and get there fast and early, and even to maybe even cloud a hitch from that alignment, depending on where we're at, especially on the short side. And you've got to have the stance here and just like getting into the details of the position. And I get to one of the things about it is I get to do that because I have been either the safeties or the outside linebackers coach. And oftentimes if we need somebody to handle, to take the corners for a while, not last year, but in the years before, I would often take the entire secondary. So I got to work with the whole secondary and have a lot of influence on that. I haven't coached directly other than just through installs with other teams and through game film analysis. I haven't gotten to directly coach a linebacker or a lineman in years. Because even when I was coordinator, I was a safeties coach.
Me as well. That's where I always ended up because it
Yeah,
was the most important position in my brain, like,
and I still think
"Force
it's the
ain't
most
fair,
important
baby."
position. But like you wouldn't hurt my feelings if you demoted me to defensive line coach for a year.
Right.
When I say demoted, I'm not a defensive coordinator, so it wouldn't be a demotion. I'm just coaching a position group. But like if you were just like, I need you to coach defensive line for a year, I'd be like, all right, let's go,
Let's go.
let's
Yep.
go. But only a year, and then I want to go to linebackers because I just want to coach everything. I want to coach everything, and that's why I don't want to be. I have
Corners
so many people who ask about especially when they hear the 90-minute practice plan. Oh, so you guys are 2 platoon? No, no. How many coaches do you have? Not many. Not many. First of all, the fewer coaches that you have, the shorter your indie period should be because you shouldn't be leaving. First of all, oh no, excuse me. The less experienced your coaches are. This is one I get is like, well, my coaches are pretty experienced. I don't know if they can do this in 10 minutes. Like, you want to give them 20 minutes to screw it up? At least they'll only have 10. And then you come together and you start to, and then you can see what happened in those 10. You only have 2 drills to work. Well, how much time do you need?
Right.
But I don't see myself ever. I don't know where I don't. If you ask me right now, I don't see myself ever coaching at another school. But if you ask me right now, I don't see myself ever accepting a job at a 2 platoon school at a big high school again, ever. Just don't I have no desire to do that.
It's different. It is different.
Yeah.
People ask what the difference is in big school, small school, and it's connectivity to those kids.
Yep.
You lose the ability to influence. Now, also, you probably have just as many kids you're influencing, right? Because you generally have the
More
numbers.
kids. Yeah.
Um,
I've
no,
always been. I mean,
I
one
would
of the
I would go back, but it
yeah.
is weird when you have to say, "I'm a defensive coach."
Right.
That was also very weird to me, like, I'm the DC, you don't coach offense, or, for varsity at Owasso, I was assistant to the assistant O-line,
I didn't
but
mind it as much in college because that's the way college is. But I've always thought, and I know it's a big school and this and that, but I just specializing a kid as a sophomore, I'm like, I don't get it. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Um, and also, here's another thing, I am vehemently against, and I don't know what we're going to do this year, but I have always been against splitting the JV. I've
using the
always
same reps.
and I played at a high school with 20 I graduated with 20. There was 516 in my graduating class. There's 2,200 or something like that in the high school. So I went to a big high school. We played freshmen. The freshman team was the freshman team. But in the spring of your freshman year, because we had spring ball there in Georgia, spring of your freshman year, you were practicing with varsity. You were dressing with varsity. You may not travel with varsity, but you were dressing every home game with varsity. As a sophomore, that was it. Your practice varsity, and when we played games on Thursday, our games were on Thursday, so it was a lighter practice. We play a lot of games on Wednesdays, but nobody fed us.
Yeah.
We walked up the hill, and two of the youngest two position coaches walked up the hill with us, and I don't even know if we warmed up. We just walked up the hill and played a game.
Well, I'll tell you, that's something I did learn getting to coach with Bill Blankenship this year, which was a godsend. Lord have mercy, it was cool. But their JV practices with varsity.
Yes.
Games are Mondays and Tuesdays because they had two JV teams. So,
Okay.
You play white team on Monday and red team on Tuesday or whatever. Same thing for freshmen. We were our own entity. We practiced by ourselves and everything else, like you said, and we had two teams and had to play 2 nights a week. But if you were a sophomore above, you were with varsity. You did all the same drill. You did everything the same. Now, you start getting into the heat of practice, and it's ones versus ones, twos versus twos, threes versus threes. You better just hope you're getting some threes rotation time, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, all
we
the
would
indie drills.
we would usually
you're right there
be
with them.
we would usually be the scout team. But the good thing was the scout team, and I've done this in other schools too. The good thing in those situations was the scout team was the JV team.
Yeah.
And
You
so
get that.
or most of it. And so and there was that level of competition of like, we know the hard part was, I don't know if you've experienced this. We walk up the hill, and the young guy gets to be defensive coordinator for the day. So what does he call? He calls
Blitzes, baby.
he calls your defense.
Oh,
You haven't run your defense in 4 days.
okay. Touche.
We've been running Lassiter 1. That our calls were always just numbered, so we're playing Lassiter, the Lassiter school on our schedule. We've been running Lassiter 1, Lassiter 2, Lassiter 3, and Lassiter 4
Gotcha. They're
for
gonna get back into
4 days. And then they go, all right, base. And you're like, which one is that?
I forget. Is that 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Yeah, is that 1, 2, 3, or 4? We literally couldn't remember. You forgot the play call. We never ran the defense.
That's beautiful.
That was the hard part. Was you got up there, and I think we just ran base, but that was the hard part.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, we've out of time.
Sweet. We checked all the boxes on GT, GY, GH counter. All the counters are accounted for. You can pull a tackle you can pull the center if you need to. Whoever you need to pull.
Hey, we didn't even mention it, but I guess you can. I've just never done it.
I actually watched some film today of pulling center and tackle because whatever the check was that week, the guard needed to be there to take on some of those angles you talk about, right? A GT counter's hard because angles are weird, and that's the last year at Owasso, we running one back power a lot of the times, but you might pull the guard, you might pull a tackle, depends on where that guy was lined up. Who can truly get if the tackle can't get inside of him to keep that defensive end backside, they just let the guard down block on him, right? And then here goes the tackle. So,
but in theory too, if you've got a kid that can do it, like, go unbalanced.
Yeah.
Then you're pulling the center who is the guard, by alignment. That's a whole nother, a whole nother element, I guess. So sure. I've never done it, and I've never felt that need to, but certainly could do it.
Yeah.
A whole different episode.
Completely different episode. Paying the bills on the way out here. Go to joedanielfootball.com/rules. Give us your email address, and you will gain a PDF document with 40 rules that Joe has deemed will win you football games. If you're not sure what all's on there, you can go back to the beginning of the episode and listen where Joe told you everything that's on there. Non-negotiables, some rules for each position, something that will win you football games.
Yeah, they get it. Go download the freaking thing. It's free. Why is it so hard?
It's free.
Yeah.
Let me make graphics for you. Contact me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I would love to do business. What's
I
our
guess
next
it.
chalk? Your chalk talk. When is that coming up? What's the next one?
Chalk Talk's the end of the month. Our next enrollment period is going to be the weight room.
Weight
We're going
room, baby.
JDFB weight room will be opening up here soon. By the time that this is out, we've had some changes in athletic speed and movement. So you might want to go check out athleticspeedandmovement.com. We haven't announced it yet, so I'm not exactly sure how the announcement's going to go. But by the time this is out, we should have had some changes to athletic speed and movement for your speed training needs. We're right at that 12 weeks, right? So 12-week progression for athletic speed and movement. Perfect time for it. We're also right at the point where with JDFB weight room, if your weight room's not killing it, or you need to get a better weight room program, or whatever the case, you want to do something different, you can get into it now and start at week 13 and go through week 24, and that's the natural jumping on point, and then you'll just roll into the in-season workouts as well. So JDFB weight room will open up here, and at the end of the month we'll have something else opening, and I cannot for the life of me remember what that is.
Is it JDFB?
No.
Okay. There you go. I tried.
Probably not.
Social media.
End of May? No.
There you go.
No.
It'd be like mid-May-ish.
It won't be opening up in May.
There you go. Social media. I am on Twitter /X at Coach Chambo. Okay. You can reach out to me.
I just did 30 kickoff registration videos in the last 3 days. It won't be opening up in May.
Just Chamberlain Football Consulting at gmail.com is my email. Please feel free to reach out with any needs. If you want to talk ball, if you want to offer to pay me to make product and put it on your website, I'm really open to making money at football at this point in my life. So let's do it. Joe, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at footballinfo. You can find me on Instagram at Joe Daniel Football, and you can email Joe at joedanielfootball.com. Of course, you can ask questions as a JDFB client anytime on the Chalkboard Forum, but currently enrollment is closed, most likely. So,
there you
go. Instagram, Twitter.
Perfect.
Email.
You should have signed up when it was open.
It'll be open again.
Podcast is at the FBCP on the Twitter /X machine. If it's your first time listening to the Football Coaching Podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can find us on your favorite podcatcher, generally Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you've been listening for a while, please leave a review, especially on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, because those two are where everybody sees us, and we want to help other coaches too, right? We truly, and BS about making money in coaching, but the real thing is we want to help people. That's what this is all about. So if you leave a good review, more people will listen and gain that help. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Coaching Podcast. And remember, coach simple, play fast, win.